Well, I think in the post-COVID period, and given the backlog that has developed, it is important on the African continent that we must re-engage and that we get experts in the field, people who are in our industry, and look at this important phase of global football, because the World Cup in Qatar brings to a close a period of 4 years. And normally the World Cup brings the beginning of a new phase. And that new phase now is 2023 to 2026. So Qatar brings down the curtain on this period. And the second thing that is important, the performance of FIFA and the FIFA president, because in March next year, there will be a FIFA election for a president that must take the next 4-year period. And of course, from a World Cup perspective, we're looking at the performance of our African teams in this World Cup. We saw that in 2010, Ghana was in the quarterfinals. In 2014 in Brazil, all of the teams were out by the second round. And in Russia, 2018, all of the African teams were out in the first round. None of them went to second round. And so we go to 2022, and we hope that that backslide on African football will be reversed, and we will see a team in the quarterfinal, semi-final. Of course, there are major injuries to some of key players in the teams, but notwithstanding that, I still believe that we will have certainly African teams in the second round, and hopefully this time when we get to the quarterfinal, we'll make it to the semi-final. I think that if you look at the performance of the African teams in the run-up to the World Cup, they played a series of friendlies. I was looking at Tunisia, for example, against Brazil. There's no one, Ghana, you look at Cameroon, none of them gave you a reassurance going into the World Cup. But you must also understand that players are nervous because the team has not been announced yet. So they don't want to make mistakes, they don't want to be injured, so they keep themselves for the final 23 to be announced. Now all those things are over. Now they're a part of the World Cup, they must go to Qatar, they must focus and give it their best shot. And I think that we do have the teams that can compete. Yeah, I think that, look, the first thing of this World Cup, it's not a World Cup that comes at the end of the club season. It comes in the middle of the club season. So clubs are now in quarterfinals, semifinals. They are halfway through winning the league. So the fans are also still there. Previously, once you go to the World Cup, the league is done and dusted. Those who won, those who were promoted, and those who were relegated. Now there's a stop on that process. So I think as the teams arrive, and the first match is always very important. Once Qatar get the first match off the ground, and if Qatar wins it, it will ignite a new spirit. And if the big teams like England, like Brazil, like Argentina, like Germany, if they get a good start, it will ignite and bring the support base into the event. We were very worried in 2010 about just how will this tournament work out. You needed something to ignite it. What we have done, we put in a concert. They had the Orlando Stadium, the best artists in the world were there. We had to do something special. We had a big concert. Then we had the opening ceremony, a spectacular show. And then something that we could not script. The opening match, Mexico versus Bafana, and that super goal of Shaba. And I think that launched the World Cup. Well, I think you must know it is a worldwide problem. that even at the level of FIFA, and we had a lot of discussions with the FIFA president on this issue, and he said, look, the broadcast revenue for women's football is 100 times less than for men's World Cup. Commercial partners want to pay less. For some reason, they think that a women's match is of lesser value. So there is also the psychological, perhaps thing that has developed over 100 years, but we have to change it. We have to contest it. And that's why we must go there and contest these things. And a World Cup for women on the African continent will just break all of those long-held misconceptions about women's football and women. So we are in there. We're up against Germany, Belgium, and Netherlands. They have a joint bid, the three countries, a massive challenge for us. The Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, they have one bid. The United States is also there with their bid. Chile is there as a bidding country, and then South Africa, the only one on the African continent. It's going to be tough, but I think we are more than equal for that challenge, and we will be in there with a good shot. We have the infrastructure, we have the stadiums, we have a good track record delivering this event, both on the field as well as commercially. So we will start next year. But for now, we focus on Qatar. Well, two, we have to encourage more women to play overseas. Clearly, the competition is at a higher level. And because in Europe, they have a strong Champions League. And you have all of the big clubs have women teams. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea, they all have women teams. On the African continent and even in our own country, that's not the case. We are encouraging more and more PSL clubs to form women teams because it is that brand that will immediately assist in bringing a value into the league because of the clubs. And that is why you find that the progression and the development of women's football in Europe was shorter. Africa is struggling because look who Sundowns played against. There's Hasakwa, there's Hearts of Oaks. Where does Hasakwa come from? It didn't happen in Europe. In Africa is the case. So we have to convince not just South African clubs, but African clubs who have big following. Al Ahly, they must have women clubs.
President, we learned last week that it seems as if at your level with the PSL, you are closer to making a breakthrough on VAR. I'm sure this is good news for South Africa.
No, we have to look at VAR. We have to train part of the referees to be operating VAR, but I think that it is a necessary and very important development. We hope that when we come to the new season, because you must know the infrastructure in the stadium must also be there, and we have to get to check that everything is in place for the introduction of VAR, but it's imminent.